All right, we're talking Gaelic football on Off the Ball this Thursday evening, and if the words Battle of Omagh frustrate you and annoy you, well, I would ignore newspapers, ignore radio for the next 48 hours or so, because it's going to be everywhere, because it is Tyrone against Dublin in Omagh in the Super 8s this Saturday evening at 7 o'clock, and we don't need a second chance to get nostalgic on this show. So we're going to look ahead to the game, but also look back on what happened in 2006 with two men who were very much a part of it. Denis Bastick of Dublin joins us in studio. How are you?
Not too bad.
And Brian McGuigan of Tyrone is on the line. Evening, Brian.
How you doing, fellas?
Two totally innocent parties in the scrap, I hear. Denis, you got a red card, but totally undeserved, I imagine.
Totally undeserved, and it was nothing got to do with the melee whatsoever, so it was in open play.
What were you sent off for?
Some bad timing on my tackles.
So did you kick off the melee, or...?
No, I tried to break it up. And
and if there's one thing we know about Brian McGuigan, he was certainly acting as a peacemaker.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, well, actually, it was the start of the National League, and I was only back. I'd spent most of the year previous in Australia, and I was only back at that time, and so I wasn't even involved that day. But I had a great view down on the pitch, and look, to be honest, I think it was probably blew out of proportion a wee bit, and the media blew it out of proportion, and look, there was no ill feeling between the two teams later on.
So what was your view of it?
Denis is a good strike with a hand, anyway. I could see that, anyway. I don't think Denis was involved. I think the fact that Collie Holmes and Cian Whelan were two of the main men that were forced in, and they're big physical lads, it made it worse than it actually was. But I think the fact that it carried on maybe over closer to the sideline and into the stands made it worse. So
we can see some footage in here as well. What number were you wearing, Denis?
8 or 9.
You haven't been spotted just yet. I'm sure a peacemaker will come in at some stage. Oh, number 9. Oh, you can tell there straight away. Yeah. Break it up, lads. Break it up. You can read what you're saying. It does seem as though you're trying to push quite a lot of people as you're attempting to break it up. In terms of scraps you were involved in down the years, Denis, was that the most serious?
No.
Or just the most highly publicised?
Yeah, the most serious ones were probably behind closed doors that nobody got to see. But that was, the most high profile, and I think just given the stand and the subs and the crowd and stuff like that, I think that added to the whole atmosphere. And yeah.
So bring us back then to what led to this, because historically Dublin and Tyrone, there was a rivalry probably going back 25 years, but for current players back then, I guess that's not really relevant. What was more relevant would have been the All-Ireland quarter-final the previous year, when O'Mulligan scores that wonder goal, goes to a replay, and Tyrone ultimately run out winners. Was there bad blood stemming from that game?
I wouldn't say it was bad blood, but it was definitely Tyrone were the team to beat. That team, 2 All-Irelands, had put us out of the championship, and we definitely had a chance to go up and kind of lay down a bit of a marker to try and compete, and just not kind of get pushed around. They were the benchmarks in the country at the time, and we tried to go up there and get a result, which we did.
Do you remember being in the dressing room beforehand with Pillar Caffrey? Was that the clear message, that no matter what happens here, we stand our ground?
Yeah, and not necessarily just the dressing room, but it would have been the message on the bus up and the week of the game, that it was a big test for us. The team was very changed from the actual team that played the previous year, so there was a lot of guys. It was my debut, my National League debut. We had Paul Copeland in goal, David O'Callaghan playing up front, and Kevin Bonner, different guys. So, it wasn't maybe our strongest team going out, but we just kind of said, whatever goes on here now, we're gonna give it all, and if anything did happen, everyone back each other up.
So how many times have you been in the blue jersey before that game?
Maybe O'Byrne Cup and stuff like that, but that was,
That is a baptism of fire.
Yeah, it was a great one to kick off with,
Brian, I guess from a Tyrone point of view, all the Tyrone players who were on the pitch that day were well used to being targeted. You were the All-Ireland champions, you'd been the All-Ireland champions a couple of years previously, you were there to be shot at, and you were known as being a physical team that any team that came up against Tyrone felt they probably had to match you.
Yeah, and for 2 out of the previous 3 years we have been All-Ireland champions, and no matter where you went to, be an Omagh or an away match, everybody was trying to set their stall out, and they didn't really want to be bullied by us. And if you remember back to to 0-3, where Kerry would have felt that they're maybe bullied by us in the semi-final. But I also remember the flip side of that after 2002 when Armagh won the All-Ireland, and we played them in Omagh the following year, and Mickey's team talk before the match was all, yes, we're not going to be bullied out here, because Armagh had done that to a lot of teams previous. So you usually do get that whenever you're All-Ireland champions, but to get it in your home turf by the Dubs was a wee bit different. Like, we always relished playing Dublin, because no disrespect to, maybe it wasn't more Denis's time, but before Denis's time, we would have seen Dublin as maybe a bit of a soft spot, and after that they learned from that. When Pat Gilroy came in, they totally changed. But before that, anybody, if the All-Ireland quarter-final draw has been made, if we come through the back door, or if Dublin was come through the back door, everybody wanted Dublin, because Dublin and Croke Park brought the best out of teams at that time.
So when you think of the change then from those Armagh games you talk about, Mickey Hart standing up in the dressing room and saying, we will not be bullied here. By the time it came to late 05, early 06, were you at a stage where you were never bullied? That it was just automatic?
Were we ever bullied after that?
After that?
Look, I think you get a bit of confidence in being All-Ireland champions, and you actually get a swagger. And we would have had a lot of boys who, I wouldn't say they're arrogant, but likes of Owen Mulligan and cocky, and some teams wouldn't have liked that. But All-Ireland champions are easy targets, and a lot of teams are run up, try to bully them, but at the end of the day, it's football that wins matches, and if you go out and you try to bully a team, it just doesn't work.
Dublin brought their substitutes down from the stand. My memory at the time, and looking back, it doesn't seem quite that way, was that quite a number of supporters got involved, but it seems, looking at that video, that actually there was a little bit of separation. Did it just get out of hand completely?
Yeah,
it off for a while.
It got serious. Yeah, it got serious in terms of where it could actually progress to, or what's next. Do people start breaking out fights in the stand, and then then all hell breaks loose, and then there's real danger involved. I suppose on the pitch, it was more handbag stuff really than anything. But yeah, I'd say it was close to the line of kicking off or being a bit more serious.
Did you receive a few thumps?
No, came away unmarked.
I don't believe you. You've got this smirk in your face as if there's some sort of omerta going on between all the players who were involved.
Look, I was happy with how I performed in the row. So, yeah.
Who were the standout stars of the row then?
Look, everybody did their own piece. And look, Kevin Bonner coming running, flying in. He got it. It was probably calming down a bit, and he just kicked off from that stage. Yeah. Was
there a bit of an obsession then with Tyrone being the market leaders in terms of physicality, that if you were to achieve anything, that was the level you consistently had to meet?
Maybe not them being markers, but Brian touched on it there about Dublin not having a backbone. There was a common theme, being spoken about the Dublin team of not having a backbone, or maybe putting it up to Dublin and then Dublin falling off at the end of games and different things like that. So,
and did you talk about that?
Yeah, it was definitely a case of where, like, no matter what happens here, we're going to stand our ground and no backward step kind of thing.
And was that going back to what Brian was saying about Mickey Hart before some of the Armagh games? Was that Pillar Caffrey up in the dressing room wall beforehand? This is what they're saying about us. This is what they're saying about you as Dublin players.
No, I think we were very clued in on what was the message, or what was coming across in the media and out away from the group and things like that. So it wasn't a case where you had to drill down. Ultimately, you can go up there and you can win the row and not take a backward step, but you need to win the game as well. So the fact that we were able to do that made a big difference. If we had to come away and held our own toe to toe but actually lost the game, it's a different outlook on the match altogether.
We should mention that actually Dublin did win the game by a goal, 1-9 to 1-6, though when people look back they thought maybe Paddy Russell should have abandoned the game after that scrap, and he famously, Mickey Hart said, if Paddy Russell had been God Almighty, he couldn't have refereed that game. Pillar Caffrey spoke about maybe some of the underlying reasons that had happened, that as Tyrone were All-Ireland champions, you were preparing to give them a guard of honour, to clap them out onto the pitch. Where you went out to warm up, one of the stewards told Paul Clark, who was laying out the cones, that you'd have to go and warm up out there, pointing to the car park. That was what really stung with the Dublin management team, that riled everybody up. And from there, it just continued. Was that something you were aware of?
Yeah, I think there was stuff going on with the dressing room or where the bus was parked and different things like that, so we didn't get an open-armed welcome when we went up there, and that was fair enough. But yeah, I think that all added to the...
Ultimately, that group, the vast majority of them, didn't go on to win an All-Ireland. And then it was famously in the Blue Book when it was made public and got out into the public domain, a day when we crossed the line together that a Dublin squad hadn't done in years. So you presume along the way you are going to get over the line and win that All-Ireland. Did it always feel as though that was some sort of an important moment, or did you realise at some stage actually, even though we did stand up to Tyrone, it didn't make much of a difference?
Well, it was a benchmark for us, so you'd set benchmarks of what teams you'd like to beat. They were All-Ireland champions. We went up to their home patch. With a few years more experience now, I realised that ultimately that doesn't have a large effect on the overall year. We did cross the line and get a result there, but if Dublin went out now and lost their first game in the league, they would still be raging hot favourites to win the All-Ireland, and plus their season wouldn't dictate on the winning and losing that first game. And I'm aware now of the celebration that goes on with winning All-Ireland as well, so no doubt they weren't in peak condition when they were playing that day.
We can talk about it now and laugh about it a little bit. If it happened in the modern day with Twitter and Facebook and the amount of coverage and podcasts that there is of Gaelic games, God knows how it would have ended up and how much publicity. It probably would have been the number one story on 6-1 News. Maybe it was at the time. I can't quite remember. The days afterwards, was there a big storm? Were you right in the firing line for everybody?
Yeah, there was. I was lucky enough, having picked up 2 yellows, to miss all the suspensions or people going to different meetings. And
9 different players were charged. One of them served a suspension.
Good lawyers. Yeah, so look, there was flaws in the system there, but we were in the next week for another league game, so which we subsequently lost. We weren't able to back up the good result. So that'll tell you how much impact what was going on in fellas and better training and taking their mind off things.
Brian, what's your memory of the time afterwards and the atmosphere around Tyrone and the amount of attention and the amount of criticism, the outrage that was there with what had happened?
Yeah, it's weird because I honestly don't. I haven't seen much footage of it and never really looked back on it, but I honestly do think it was blew out of proportion. I can't really actually mind much happening before or even after in the game. So I don't know if there's any niggles going on. That I don't. I think it actually boiled over when our doctor come on and got involved with Alan Brogan at that time, and that it escalated. It escalated a wee bit from that. But I don't know. I think, as you say, the media storm and the social media. If it had happened back then, it could have been different. But the fact it was only a league game, I don't think it really mattered. I don't think it really mattered that much. If it had been a championship game, it could have been a different story. But just come back on the Dublin team, I had a lot of respect for those Dublin teams, and they probably weren't lucky. And I know we talk about no backbone. We're talking about no backbone, but I think they suffered a wee bit in the media storm they would have had after winning Leinster so easily, and then they were going into a quarter final, and every team wanted them, and they couldn't afford to lose. Whereas now, if they were going into a Super 8s, where they could afford to lose one game, maybe that team could have went on and won an All-Ireland if they had got one defeat and rectified the flaws that they had.
When an incident like this happens, what would Mickey's reaction generally be?
To be fair to Mickey's one thing that he does, even if he thinks that you're wrong, he'll back you to the hilt. I mean, there was even an incident where Ryan McManaman and Paul Gavin had an incident in a league game, and Ryan McManaman was totally wrong, but Mickey came out and he totally backed Ryan. But behind closed doors at training, he had to go at Ryan because it's something that shouldn't have been happening. It probably took the focus away on the actual game.
Right, that's interesting. And listen, it's successful management. We've seen it from all the greats. Alex Ferguson, probably the prime example. Never a bad word to say about his players in the media, but behind closed doors, a very different type of person. And I'd imagine there was probably quite a few incidents like that through the years, Brian, where actually things that in the media Mickey batted away quite comfortably, when you got back into training on a Tuesday night, you didn't hear the last of it.
No, and there was another incident against Omagh where Ryan was involved again with I think it was one of the
the pattern emerging here.
the McEntees, and again he came out and backed you. But Mickey, when we got back to training, Mickey only wanted to focus on the football. He was great at taking the focus away from the players when they were behaving badly, and even incidents that would have happened maybe after we won a match and we get in maybe a bit of a handling that night on the Sunday night, even out in the town. A lot of focus would have been, because Tyrone and champions around that time, and everybody was looking to meet the players even whenever we were out. And there was a few incidents that did happen when we were out, but Mickey would have backed them whenever the newspapers come to talk about it. But behind it all, he was saying, "Look, that's not how we behave out in public. We're role models, and we don't do those sort of things."
I am wondering, if we got Ricey McMenamin on, would he be blaming Brian McGuigan for the various misdemeanours down through the years that Mickey was having a quiet word on the Tuesday night in training? Just before we get on to the game then on Saturday, Denis, you're probably better positioned than anybody to compare great teams, and coming up against that great Tyrone team, playing a brilliant Kerry team through the years, being part of an outstanding Dublin team, and then going up against the Mayo team who were trying to make that sort of breakthrough. Just how good was that Tyrone team around 05-06?
Yeah, I touched on it earlier. They were the benchmark. They had a bit of everything. If they wanted to play hard, they play hard. Want to play quick, and from a forwards perspective, they had match winners. Stephen O'Neill doing his dummy solo and putting them over from the end line. Mulligan, obviously that goal as well, but Canavan as well at the time. So they had all the really, really good match winners, which was really difficult to mark. If you mark one guy out of the game, then someone else just pops up. So
it's a 7 o'clock throw-in this Saturday evening in Omagh for Tyrone against Dublin. You were at Croke Park last Saturday for Dublin's victory against Donegal. I was there and I couldn't figure out what sort of Dublin performance it was, whether they always had an extra level to go to. So if Brennan scores that goal and Dublin don't get the opportunity to go down and there isn't that 6-point swing, do Dublin automatically respond the way they always do and the way champions do, or were they actually having an off day where Donegal had a real opportunity to get them? Having been in the squad, probably part of those type of performances, what was your sense of how they played?
Look, if he had scored the goal, there was still lots and lots of time, so I think there would have been no panic in the team. There was plenty of time to get that score back. I think they went about their business. They did what had to be done, and they won the game. So it was a professional performance. Some guys didn't have good days. Other guys then stepped up to the plate. So that was good to see. That if some guys are off form, then just the other guy then steps in and does the business. So, and I think as the game grew on, you'd never felt like Dublin were going to lose it. Whatever was going to happen, they just had enough. So it was made a bit of an impact then as well, and I would say they had a couple of more gears left to go. What happens to guys who have an off day? How do the next few days go? Are you having a conversation with Jim straight away in the dressing room and it's made clear to you that you hadn't met the standards that are expected of a Dublin player? Are you left to go off and sulk and you haven't done well and come back Tuesday night? Guys know straight away whether you had a good day or not a good day, and like in the dressing room after isn't the place to do. I think you need to reflect, you need to look back, try and come up with the reasons why you had the off day or what you did wrong and things like that. So, but the big guys maybe looking over the shoulder now, given the strength of the panel, and it'd be interesting to see what way and what happens this weekend, who togs out. Brian, when they met in the All-Ireland semi-final last year, it was a pretty dark day for Tyrone. The game was done well before the full-time whistle. 12 points between the sides in the end. Did you see anything in Dublin last Saturday night to suggest that there is a weakness there? There's something Tyrone can target? There's not too many weaknesses in that Dublin squad, and you'll be talking about, is this the greatest team to play GAA? I don't know if you can say the greatest team to play GAA now, but I do think that they're the greatest panel to ever play GAA. And when boys do have off days, there's different boys coming in at different times, and even the wee simple thing like bringing the teams lined out last week, and I was the wee fella who come on, and I was saying, who's that lad? Heard of him, and I just actually looked him up this week, and when you actually study him, if he was probably in another county, he would be starting at this stage, because I think he maybe played minors and he was under 21s 2 years, maybe as a joint captain of an under 21 team. So, they have players they got to bring in at different stages, and I'm sure Merchant will only be playing bit parts, he'll only be playing some matches, but even the likes of Brian Howard, who
was probably a periphery figure, but last week he came in and he was man of the match. He had a sensational game, and even the likes of Kilkenny and Mannion, those boys all had off days, but the likes of Cormac Costello come on, Paul Flynn come on, got his customary few points. So the panel's very, very strong.
Can you talk to us about Owen Murchan? Because I think he was a player who stood out for everybody who was at Croke Park because of his size, because we're so used to seeing every inter-county footballer now needs to be 6 foot. He's a long way off it. He's a little guy. He's quick as lightning. He seemed to pop up everywhere around the pitch. And again, like all these guys, fitted comfortably into the Dublin system. What type of player is he?
Yeah, look, he's a young guy, really, really enthusiastic, loves the game. He's come in there and, a lot of big personalities in it. He's just got on with his job. He was obviously, there was a role there from last week and that really suited him to go. And Mark won the best players or standout players in the country in McHugh. He went on, just head down and just did his job and did it well. McHugh may pick up 2 scores, but that was, you'd take that any day off that kind of player. So look, I think Dublin do have the advantage of there's horses for courses, and the different guys suit different games and different opposition, and I think you'll see that throughout the Super 8s. So.
And Dublin have a big squad, probably the biggest training squad, it seems, sometimes up on 40 players over the course of a week, and maybe they're not all in together all the time. But you'll have seen a lot of younger guys come through, and it's a huge thing if you're called up to train with the county. But I'm sure there's a lot of guys who don't end up actually playing championship football. How do you know? Do you get a good sense early on as to the guys who are going to make it and become a part of this long term, and the guys who maybe just don't have what Jim Gavin wants?
No, I would be of the opinion that there's not a lot between a lot of the football, and some guys get a break and some guys don't get a break, or some guys pick up an injury at the wrong time of year. So I think there's a thin line between certain guys who make it and don't make it, but the guys who are around the periphery, or they're all well enough able and can hold their own in Croke Park or any game. But sometimes the guy get a chance and it doesn't go well for him, and unfortunately then that's the next guy is around then.
They created a huge amount of goal chances again, didn't take them, and is that a concern, or is that something actually we become used to with Dublin at the time? You create a lot of chances.
I think it'd be worse if it was the other way around, so you take your goal chances any day. If you can create 4, 5, 6 goal chances, a lot of averages is you're going to get 1 or 2 of them maybe. So I think they'd be happy enough creating the chances. It was the finishing and maybe the last pass and option taken, I think.
Brian, were you in any way taken by surprise by Tyrone's performance against Roscommon? 4-24 they racked up, double score victory after a summer of constant criticism about their style of play, that they're too defensive. To rack up a score like that's pretty incredible.
Yeah, well, really, an average team, you'd have to call them an average team like Roscommon. That's what Tyrone's capable of doing to a team like that. And if you want any way not to play Tyrone, it's the way Roscommon did last week. And it's unfortunate that Kevin McStay has tried to play an attacking brand of football, and it's just not worked for him against the likes of Tyrone. And he's even said himself during the week where he's going to have to adapt next year to the way that Roscommon approach the way they play. But Tyrone this week, I'm sure after last year, a lot of the players will be hurting, and you can be sure one thing, Mickey will be hurting after the Dublin game last year, and Dublin would have been on his eyesight all year. There's no doubt about that. And this week he has a lot of decisions to make, especially on the goal kicks, because I think the way Tyrone play, the obvious thing to do is to push up on Cluxton's kickouts, because they say that if you try and punish Dublin's kickouts, well, then they struggle. But I also feel that if they go long and they have Brian Fenton in the middle of the field, and even when the second phase ball, they're very strong at it, I think it'll be, if they win the ball and get in early, Tyrone will not be able to set up. So I have a sneaky suspicion that Mickey might concede the kickouts and get his defensive structure in place first. And then if Dublin attack, then their counter-attacking game will maybe pay dividends.
Right, that'll be interesting to keep an eye on, because the kickouts were a huge factor in the game against Donegal, where Donegal won only 2 of Dublin's kickouts, whereas Dublin won 10 of Donegal's, and the Donegal keeper seemed proper rattled by the end of the game, that he just was totally unsure. But even the 2 that Donegal won was this huge psychological boost it felt at the time. Everybody noticed that they got a Cluxton. Now, maybe they didn't capitalise, and maybe actually then, from what you're saying, Brian, is that, all right, it feels like a big thing in the stadium, but ultimately, if you're only winning 2 of them, it's not actually for what you give up in attacking their kickouts. It's not really worth it.
No, well, if Dublin goes short and Tyrone concede the goal kicks and Dublin goes short, they still have to work it through everybody. Whereas if Tyrone push their 6 forwards up to go man for man and Dublin win in the middle of the field and they make the quick play, like by the time the 6 forwards, or 5 of them at least, get back and then try and push up again, it'll be so demanding on them, and Tyrone just wouldn't have the strength of panel that Dublin have, so wouldn't be able to cope with.
So are you saying that Tyrone should play with a blanket defence?
I think that if they want to stand a chance, I think the key to Tyrone staying in the game is to try and get in front and stay in front, because last year that's what their game depended on. And when Conor Callan got the goal early, Tyrone were chasing the game from early doors.
But would that not be madness, Brian, that if you're trying to do something similar to last year and keep it low scoring, like you can't keep the Dubs low scoring, you need to go and outscore them?
It's not the way I want to see Tyrone playing, but I just think with the way they've played all year that they have to do it, because I don't think they can push up. I just don't think they can push up because Dublin's too strong around that middle sector. And I was watching from behind the goals last week where Roscommon were winning some of the midfield battles and they were getting ball, but they were so laboured when they won the ball. They were going out to the wings because it must have been something that they're trying to do at training all week, where they're trying to use the wings. But that just gives Tyrone a chance, too much time to get back. Whereas Dublin can hit Tyrone early and Tyrone have pushed up, and then they make it scores.
And Brian is sorry, Dennis, do you want to come in?
Yeah, just on the push up and the kick-outs piece. The reason why I might push up on the kick-out is if you force a turnover, what result are you going to get from that? So you say when Donegal won a couple, did he actually go then and get a score where you see Con making the turnover and it's danger, there's a goal opportunity. So pushing up on the kick-outs or trying to win the kick-out means that you try and win the ball and then get a resulting score out of it. So that's the risk. There's no point in winning the kick-out and then not getting the score out of it. So.
And just on the Omagh factor then, Brian, how different is playing in Omagh to playing in Croke Park? Is it, like we've seen the footage there from 06, is it very, very tight? Is the total length of the pitch, is it a lot shorter?
Somebody actually told me the other day that the dimensions of the pitch were quite similar to Croke Park, but I don't know how it was edited or what, but somebody showed me a picture the day of somebody in Omagh and seemingly the lines of it took on a wee bit. So
not
by a wee bit, what do you mean?
A big bit. But look, historically Omagh hasn't been a great pitch for Tyrone to play in, but any time we play Dublin in Omagh, it always seems to be a close encounter. But by all reports, there's going to be more Dublin supporters there than Tyrone supporters.
How do you see it going, Denis?
Yeah, I feel like it's a bit of a role reversal to 2006, and the difference being that it's an actual championship match now rather than a league, so there's a lot more at stake. I well imagine that the pitch will be a lot tighter than it normally is.
There's not many teams that physically try to stand up to Dublin.
I think because that has happened in the past and Dublin have coped very well with it. So if you come face to face, we meet you face to face. If you come another way, we meet you another way. So like I said about 2006, it was no good going toe to toe, stand your ground, then losing the game. So there has to be a winning the result is ultimately what you need to do. But I think it's definitely worth a couple of points going up there to Tyrone. You just see the longer the game goes on, maybe breaking it down. Dublin have had success last year in the semi-final, and they'll probably try and go back to a similar way of trying to break down Tyrone.
All right, Brian, your thoughts? Is this going to be a landmark day for Mickey Hart?
No, I do think Dublin will win, but just hope that we don't go out as tamely as we did last year and don't put a hand on Dublin. But again, I hope that we don't settle for maybe a 3 or 4 point defeat. I hope we actually go for it. All
right, Brian, great stuff. Thanks a lot as always. Go on, Denis, one last chance. Who did you smack?
Brian mentioned someone there was a bit cocky earlier on, so
there was a queue for Omagh to get her.
Well, I had this jersey over his head, so he couldn't see it all that.
What happened after that is nobody's business.
Yeah.
All right, Denis, thanks a lot for joining us in the studio.
Thank you.